Buffalo. Chef Carrie's always cooking up something new and exciting at Nightingale. Nightingale is located at 26th and Lyndale in Minneapolis. Visit nightingalempls.com to view a menu or place a takeout order.
Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
Coming to you live from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and streaming live right now on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@thegailey show. That's GAILY. This is The Gailey Show. I am your host, JP Derbegossian. Here with me in the studio is our executive producer, Jim Pounds.
Greetings.
Hello. And in the control room today is Patrick. Hi, Patrick.
Hey, how's it going? First Monday I've worked with you guys.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We are just continuing our journey as a daily show, learning all the ins and outs of it. And, you know, it's good to be inside in the studio when it's freezing outside. But what we are having on the show today, we're going to practice good democracy, which means having a conversation with our very own House representative in the Minnesota legislature. Our guest today is Representative Sandra Feist, DFL, representing District 39B. Did my research, Representative Feist. Here's a fun fact. She sang jazz in New Orleans in the French Quarter before seeing the attacks on immigration rights, where she started working as an immigration paralegal before going on to earn her law degree focusing on immigration. And after getting elected to the Minnesota House, she's championed a lot of legislation. And unfortunately, I can't list it all out right here. What caught my eye was the creation of the Office of Restorative Practices within DPS, the Department of Public Safety, to expand youth restorative justice in Minnesota, which was a historic step away from the practices we were doing before, right? In the very punitive practices in our youth justice system. So it is very, I'm so happy to finally meet, in this setting, Representative Feist. Welcome to The Gailey Show.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. This is so when we were planning the show and moving to this new format, and obviously we're talking about, we're going to be talking about, progressive politics and whatnot. And immediately we thought of you because, and for folks who know, Representative Feist has been our representative for a while now, and Jim would start sending emails to you. And then one day he started talking about how you were responding to those emails. And I'm like, oh, wow, really? And so Jim has a very nice thing to say about.
I've been represented in, California and Wisconsin and Minnesota. And I can honestly say I have never been as well represented as I have by Sandra Feist. There was an instance that I'm a little embarrassed to admit, but I send her signing a lot of petitions, probably too many. And there was one that she wrote back and she said, this doesn't sound like you. This doesn't sound like something you would support. And I went back and looked at it and she was right. She knew better than I did, sort of my value system, at least as I've expressed it. And so there's somebody that's really paying attention when they correct something you did thoughtlessly. So thank you for that. So you were the first person I wanted on the show, and I'm so glad you're here.
Well, thank you so much. I really do. A lot of what we do as politicians, on the House floor, there's lots of drama and intrigue. But, responding to emails, making sure people feel heard, helping people if they have issues with state or local government entities, that's a really big, important part of our job. And we should never forget it in the midst of all of the drama.
So speaking of drama, the session was supposed to start tomorrow. And interestingly, I was reading that the Senate, who also has a tie in terms of number of votes, reached a power sharing agreement very civilly, even though there's going to be a special election here at the end of January. The House, in the meantime, however, split evenly, special election coming out, and the GOP has decided to play some politics and force representation, taking complete control, which the Minnesota voters did not give them. So I saw that the House members, if I understand this correctly, the DFL, were sworn in already this weekend. Is that true?
That is true. It's not secret anymore, right?
Oh yeah,
I'm pretty
not
sure it's
secret.
not secret anymore.
Not breaking
Yeah,
news here on the Gailey Show.
no,
We don't do breaking
no.
news.
Correct. Yeah, I took my son with me and I was like, "You're coming, you can't put anything on the internet. Don't tell anybody, it's a secret."
Oh,
But yeah, we were all sworn in. Obviously, it's really important to us that we do our job, represent our communities. And like I said, there's a lot of the work we do which has nothing to do with, the fireworks, the public facing, drama and negotiations. There's just a lot of work that we wanted to make sure we were able to get to do while the negotiations were ongoing. And so yes, we were sworn in early.
And there was an agreement. I mean, we had was it Representative Cullen that was on last week?
Breon Curran.
Curran, I'm sorry, beg your pardon. And and they were telling us that, there was an agreement. There was an agreement with
Mhm.
leadership. So there was no difference between the two houses a certain number of days ago. And I think
Yeah.
everybody in Minnesota always expects Minnesotans to be better behaved and to be a little more responsible than what we see in, Mississippi. So I was surprised when the train seemed to go off the track. It's like, why did that happen? There's precedent in the past when this happened one other time. There was a, sharing. That seems
Mhm.
like the thing to do in a situation like this.
Mhm. Yeah, I actually just read the book written by Rod Searle, the former speaker during the 1978
Yeah,
session that was tied, and it was fascinating.
yeah,
In that era, the DFL were the pretty badly behaved party.
Oops.
But yeah, but I mean, there is precedent for having a power sharing agreement, like you said. We actually did, agree upon the broad terms of having committee co-chairs, having 50-50 membership on those committees. It was a really good arrangement, in my opinion, to ensure that we could engage in co-governance.
right.
But that really fell apart because the Republicans have said now that no matter what the results of the court case involving Representative Brad Tabke, that they plan to try to refuse seating him. And we just weren't willing to abide by that, and that is really important, and we feel like that is a good tenet of democracy, that when somebody is elected by their constituents, that they should be seated. It sets a really, really bad precedent.
Yeah. Well, it turns this is supposed to be, as you say, about governing, and somewhere along the line, an awful lot of people on the other side of the aisle don't understand what governing is, or think this is about theatrics or circus behavior or whatever. But clearly people, I think, would generally say they want the two parties to cooperate. They certainly don't want them battling over, restrooms and, what the upholstery looks like. They want people to
Mhm.
do things substantial. So it's frustrating to see the Republicans being so petty. I can say that I'm a former Republican. I finally woke up in 1984, but I'm not speaking as an always a critic. I'm speaking as someone who sat in those chairs and stood in those shoes reluctantly now, but I know kind of what the thinking that's going on. This is not representative of the kind of decent people that were part of the Republican Party in the past, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So,
and
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when I talk with constituents about something called Civility Caucus, it's something that I am a co-lead of. So there are two Democrats, two Republicans in the House and the Senate. And when I'm door knocking during the election season, when I talk with people about the work we're doing to bring people together, build relationships across the aisle so that we can do better work collaboratively, that really speaks to people. It is what people want to see us doing. And I was weirdly kind of excited for a term of co-governance, which we will have,
Right,
because the Republicans do not have 68 votes. So, to move a bill from committee to committee, to
right,
pass anything off the House floor, we will need to work together.
right.
And I'm really looking forward to that. And I know the people of Minnesota really want that.
Agreed.
I didn't know about that caucus, but there's a couple of things that are coming up here. So one, I really appreciate you because I don't know the history of the last time this happened in the 70s. But for you to say, hey, it was kind of the DFL that was acting,
Yeah.
with shenanigans, that's called growth. That's self-reflection and saying, hey, we're not going to do that this time around, which we don't see happening apparently on the other side of the aisle. Also, this idea of not seating someone who's democratically elected. gets to this thing that's happening within I would say, the national party, and I hope that it's not coming down to the state party, of these very anti-democratic policies. I was a resident of Michigan, where they had the emergency person role, where the person could be appointed by the governor and go in and just basically override all democratic leadership, democratically elected rather leadership, regardless of party. And I think that, do we know how that resolves itself? I mean, they can say that they're not going to seat somebody, but the courts ultimately have to intervene, right? I mean, do we even know? Is this just speculation at this point?
Well, I can tell you what I understand, and I'm
Yeah.
on the radio, so hopefully I'm right. But I can tell you, in 1979, what happened is the Republican whose seat was being contested, I believe he had a heart attack. He like collapsed in the middle of it all and had to go to the hospital. So that, like, it kind of ended in a really sad way. But I don't think he died. But he, it was like very dramatic.
Yeah.
My understanding is that at this point, we're waiting on the court to make a determination. What we know is that in court, Representative Tabke was able to demonstrate numerically that he won that election, and that over 21,000 members of his community voted, and that he was elected. So that was what was demonstrated in court. So we expect that the court will ultimately find that Brad Tabke was elected and won that election. I am not 100% sure how this plays out in terms of like Mason's rules on the House floor.
Mhm.
But I guess it could go to the Supreme Court, but it would be setting a really bizarre precedent where the court has ruled, where somebody has demonstrated that they were elected. And what happened in 1978 was actually kind of quaint. The Republican was brought to court for under allegations that they had lied in their advertisements about their opponent. And how far have we come? I think a lot of people on some sides of the aisle would say that that's free speech. But back then, the court said that no, you should not be able to lie in your political advertisements, and that was kind of what the drama was about. It wasn't about whether or not they had been elected.
Okay, so what are your plans for tomorrow then? There is not going to be a session then tomorrow, right? Like the DFL is not going to show up. Is that my understanding correctly?
Well, we're happy to show up if there's a power sharing agreement.
All right.
So if there's power sharing, I believe that Representative Hortman was on the radio maybe like 45 minutes ago. I haven't like caught it. I've been busy doing immigration law, but apparently she maybe sent something to Representative Damas in terms of like another offer. I'm not up on that. But yeah, if there is a power sharing agreement and an agreement by Representative Dameth and the Republicans that they are not going to try to oust one of our duly elected members, then we would be thrilled to show up
I have to
tomorrow.
squeeze in a really quick break here. More with Representative Feist on the flip side of this break.
Hey, it's Patrick. Your friends and family may be gone now, but the messes that were left behind on your carpets, rugs, upholstery, and more remain. That's why you need to call My Cleaning Heroes at Zero Res and get 2024 out of your house for good. That's why to start the new year, Zero Res is offering 24% off all cleaning services for the month of January. That's 24% off carpets, tiles, rugs, upholstery, any surface in your home, and don't forget about your air ducts. Call Zero Res right now at 952-ZERO-RES or visit ZeroResMinnesota.com and ask for the AM 950 special. But Zero Res isn't just good for cleaning up the post-holiday messes at home. They can make your business look great too. Zero Res was out at the station this fall, and we couldn't have been happier with their quality of work and their professionalism, and the station looks great. So don't wait. Book your home cleaning today. Call 952-ZERO-RES or go to ZeroResMinnesota.com and ask for the AM 950 special. Zero Res.
End-of-life decisions are not easy to make. Hi, I'm Mary T. of Mary T. Hospice Care. It's important to make sure that this difficult time is meaningful and comforting to you and your loved ones. Our hospice team provides an individualized program of physical, emotional, spiritual, and practical care so your loved one is comfortable and not in pain. At Mary T. Hospice, we understand that choosing the right hospice care provider can be overwhelming, but we're here to assist you. Learn more today at marytinc.com.
Hello, everyone. This is Becky McNatton.
And Tara Martini.
Hosts of Feels Out Loud, heard each Sunday at 9 a.m. on AM 950 radio, where we talk about mental health, life, emotions, and strategies to help you honor your humanness.
Join us starting Sunday, January 26th, as we process through feeling out loud, what it means and looks like to share of ourselves with others, and the impact to us when we don't.
So grab your coffee, find a comfortable spot to relax, and tune in at 9 a.m. to live and share mental health with us together.
Hi, I'm Peter Solak.
And I'm Adam Ostrowski.
We are here at Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces to talk about the joy of live fire cooking. Cooking over a live fire is the oldest and most basic form of cooking.
What's new is in the way fire is handled and its heat is managed.
It's easier to experience and enjoy the smell and taste of food cooked over a live fire.
Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces sells and installs live fire grills, fire pits, and ovens. Let us help you experience the smell, the taste, the fun of cooking with fire.
Pizza was first made and is still best made in an open fire oven. The radiant and conductive heat of a live fire is unmatched for wood roasting and baking artisan breads too.
Come see the many ways you can cook over a live fire.
Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces has over 35 working wood and gas units on display at the corner of East Franklin and Riverside Avenue in Minneapolis. More information at woodlandstoves.com. Find the fire that works for you. Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces, out of the ordinary products and services since 1977.
Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm JP Darbagosian, joined by my executive producer, Jim Pounds. We're back here with Representative Sandra Feist, DFLer, representing District 39B. This is democracy, folks. Talking with your representative and or your senator. This is really important because, as you can see, Representative Feist interacts, has conversations. And so if you don't know who your representative is or your senator and you haven't talked with them, reach out to them. They are very lovely people, and they will respond and they will have conversations with you, regardless of the party. But definitely, I can tell from our experience, particularly if you live in 39B, Representative Feist is going to be right there with you. And okay, I think there's a lot of speculation, and I don't know, we don't know what's going to happen, tomorrow. And maybe you all will have a power sharing agreement, and you'll be there. And so we'll put a pin in that, I think, for right now. I'm curious then, what do you hope to see then in terms of legislation during this session? What are priorities that you would hope to see get done in any type of agreement that comes between you and your party rather and the GOP?
Yeah, well, one of the key priorities for the DFL this term is ensuring that we protect the progress that we made from the 2023 historic term. So it is really important to us that we stand together and that we don't roll back worker protections like earned sick and safe time, paid family and medical leave, that we don't roll back the progressive tax reforms to, create the child tax credit, to actually give tax breaks to middle and low income Minnesotans and not wealthy corporations. So, a lot of what we're going to do is ensure that as we're negotiating over a budget, that will probably be, it won't be quite as ambitious as last term, but we want to make sure that we're not giving up ground that the people of Minnesota, voted us in to advance in the past term. And so that's really important. Personally, one of the things that I'll be focusing on is, being somebody in public office who is an immigration expert. One of the reasons I ran for office was because I had just completed 4 years as an immigration attorney under Donald Trump. And I was feeling pretty despondent over my ability to affect change at the federal level. And that's why I wanted to be, more vocal at that state and local level. And so, I want to be a resource. I want to be a voice for what we can do to be protecting our immigrant community members. So that's a big priority that, I personally have, but we all have. I'm part of a group of legislators that have come together to just try to coordinate our response so that we can be proactive instead of reactive as the federal government is coming in and, they're trying to pressure us to work with them to exact their, extreme immigration agenda, to attack our LGBTQ, community members. We need to stand strong and we need to coordinate and share information and share resources and share strategies. And so I'm a lot of the work we do, like I said, sorry, I'm like babbling,
Yeah.
but yeah, anyway, that's like a big part of
It's
why I like
not
to do
it's
this
not
term.
rambling. I did wanna ask you about immigration because this is obviously your
Mhm.
area of expertise. And I'm a dual citizen of France and the US, and I have an immigrant parent, and I wanna recognize that that's a lot different Western Europe, immigration than how folks are treated, if they're from, Central and South America, Africa, East Asia, Southeast Asia. I wanna be mindful of that. There's still a lot of privilege of folks coming from Western Europe that they get that other folks from other countries don't get. That being said, I've watched the immigration process my entire life, and I know there are issues with it, even for folks that are coming from a more privileged, country like from Western Europe. What is your take on what Minnesota can do to resist these policies, these mass deportations, these things that they're putting on the table that are going to, we've seen it with farmer groups already saying, look, if you try to, deport 50% of our workforce, then this is going to cause havoc and chaos within our food system. So, I mean, what are you looking for in terms of what they're going to do, and then how do we respond as a state?
Mhm. Yeah, well, I think I'll respond in terms of both practical and then messaging. So,
Hmm.
practically speaking, we are not required to give information to the federal government if they don't give a judicial warrant. And so, ICE likes to use very unofficial methods of information gathering, and we are not legally required to respond to those requests without a judicial warrant. So, one of the things we're really urging agencies and organizations is don't like pre-comply, and definitely don't rush to compliance because there are litigation strategies out there. So if ICE is showing up at your door, reach out to the ACLU of Minnesota, reach out to your state representative and senator, and don't just jump to compliance out of fear, because we do have a lot of tools in the toolbox. Also, you don't have to collaborate with ICE when it comes to civil immigration enforcement. Last term, I was the chief House author of the North Star Act, which is different than the North Star Promise, which was free college. But the North Star Act was, what people on the other side would have called a sanctuary state in a really negative way. But in reality, what it did is it said that our state and local government entities shouldn't be required to and shouldn't be allowed to share information, collaborate with the federal government when it's just for the purpose of deporting people in our communities. So don't jump to compliance. That's like my practical advice to like everyone. Reach out to the ACLU, reach out to the different organizations that are there to like support immigrants. And then the other thing is around messaging. So like you said, farmers rely very heavily on immigrant labor. They come on H-2A visas, and there are a lot of
Mhm.
people who might be here without legal status. The same is true for our manufacturing industry. And one statistic that I heard is that 48% of the workforce in the United States that produce our fruits and vegetables are immigrant labor.
Mhm.
And so I think it's really important that these industries are speaking up. So manufacturing, our care professionals here in Minnesota, Minnesota Public Radio has done some really good reporting around the increasing percentage of our care professionals working with our seniors, making sure that they can age with dignity. Those are increasingly immigrant residents, a lot of them on temporary protective status or without status. And so we need to make sure we're sharing those stories, sharing those concerns, and making it clear that immigration isn't about the other, like these other immigrants who are out there. They are about our workforce, our community, our industry. I think that'll be really important.
What is the so who if ICE wants to get that judicial warrant, who does that? DOJ, like a federal court, like who issues those?
Well, they could get a court ordered, like a federal court ordered judicial warrant. And if they do, then, it's a judicial warrant. And then we can decide, where do we go? Like, where does the line cross to civil disobedience? And that's not something I'll advise you on or businesses on, but, we'll have to confront a lot of, legal and moral considerations over these next 4 years.
I'm gonna have to take a break here, but the question I want to ask you about is, as an immigration attorney, and we'll get into this after the break, as an elected representative, that there are folks that are voting for immigration policies that will literally hurt them, and they either don't recognize it, and I'm thinking about the farming community, which tends to be Trump country. Like, I want to kind of get your sense of the messaging part of this, of why folks are voting for something that clearly will be so detrimental to this country. We'll be right back after this break.
Thanks to everyone who's continued to support AM 950. Good news, the AM 950 2025 calendar is here, featuring photos I took around Minnesota and important progressive dates. Members that sign up for a one-time $30 membership will receive a 2025 AM 950 calendar as a thank you gift. Make a one-time $100 donation. You'll get the AM 950 calendar and a signed copy of Tom Hartman's latest book as a thank you. Go to am950radio.com for the details on the membership. That's am950radio.com. Thank you so much for supporting AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Hi, my name is Katty from Minnesota Recovery Connection.
And I'm Erin with Minnesota Recovery Connection.
We'd like you to listen to our show, Redefining Recovery, a Recovery Revolution. It is on Saturdays at 10 a.m. on AM 950.
On the show, we discuss topics about addiction, understanding substance use disorder, the many pathways to recovery, and finding your personal journey.
Listen to Redefining Recovery Saturdays at 10 a.m. and find our podcast on your favorite app.
This is Chad, owner of AM 950 for Snap Construction again. Does your home feel colder than it should with the furnace constantly running? Or do certain rooms always feel colder than the rest of the house? Those are signs the attic in your home may need an insulation upgrade. Snap Construction can help by providing a free energy audit for your home's insulation. The average cost of getting new insulation can cost much less than a new furnace. Plus, Snap Construction is a BPI certified installer. That means if you use Snap for your next insulation project, you qualify for up to $650 in total rebates from your energy provider. After my free inspection, my insulation upgrade was completed within a few weeks and the rebate check was in the mail. Snap to it and reduce your heating bill this winter with Snap Construction. Call 612-333-SNAP. That's 612-333-SNAP for your free energy audit when you mention AM 950. Snap Construction, arguably the most well-reviewed exterior contractor and insulation company in the metro.
As a teacher, having a foster grandparent in my room, it enables me to have an extra set of hands.
Foster grandparents are role models, tutors, and friends to children with exceptional needs.
It's been fantastic having Grandma Freddie in our room.
It is the best feeling in the world.
I'm a best student because of her.
To learn more about how to become a foster grandparent and help children in need, call 1-800-942-2677 or visit SeniorCorps at nationalservice.gov.
When addiction takes hold, it's easy to feel like no one can help. But you're not in this alone. For 75 years, Hazelden Betty Ford has been at the forefront of addiction and mental health care, evolving treatment, reimagining recovery, and breaking through barriers to help families everywhere find healing. So please reach out at 855-489-2383. Help is here. Sponsored by Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation and aired by the Minnesota Broadcasters Association and this station.
And you're back with us here at The Gailey Show on AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, which would not be on the air without the sponsors that you hear in our commercial break. So be sure to support them and do your business with them because they make this show possible. They make AM 950 possible. So be sure when you go in there, tell them that you heard about them on AM 950. With me here is Representative Sandra Feist, who represents District 39B in the Minnesota House. And Representative Feist, I was, after the election, literally a day after the catastrophe, I saw all these farmer groups in Iowa and in Georgia saying, don't deport our workers. And what do you mean that he's going to do the mass deportations? And there was all this shock from all of these groups that he was actually going to do the things that he'd been literally talking about and everybody been chanting about with their stupid little signs for months. I don't understand what you clearly are steeped in the the lore of it, the legal aspects of it. Like, is there a precedent in our politics where we have so many people that are voting for deportations and then after the election saying, well, no, but don't deport my workers, or don't do it in my state. Do it everywhere else, but not my state, and then be upset like at H-1B visas. There was that whole like meltdown in their party about how some of them want H-1B visas and some of them are like, no, we're stopping all immigration, and now they're fighting amongst themselves. And I'm like, I don't understand. You had a policy, didn't you? And now suddenly it's, oh, we're not going to actually enact our policy. I don't understand. What's your take on all of this?
A short aside on H-1B, a lot of H-1B workers are teachers. So, like, we were talking a lot about tech bros, but just for the record, a lot of H-1Bs are language immersion teachers who work in our K-12 schools. So, public interest announcement about H-1Bs. So, I mean, I think that if you look, there was this law that Georgia passed a little while ago now, where they were also trying to get people to quote unquote self-deport. And when they lost all of their watermelon harvesters, they were like, what? They were like shocked by the impact. So I think of that. But I can tell you from conversations that I've had that I think they legitimately didn't think that Trump was talking about their employees. I talked with an employer who said, well, my employees are really skilled. Trump wasn't talking about them. Like, he's going to create a green card path for them. And I was like, that's not what he's been saying. But so I do think that people legitimately didn't think it was about quote unquote their immigrants. There was an incredibly excellent, very detailed article in the New York Times that I read about a gentleman who is in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district and is in DACA. So he's been here since he was a baby, brought, from Mexico, and his whole family, extended family, they're all like super hardcore Republicans. And they kept telling him, it's not you, it's the other immigrants. And he's like, no, it's literally me. And so I think there's just this cognitive dissonance that people are able to live with, where they legitimately believe the lies that there are immigrants out there who are eating people's cats and dogs, and it's those immigrants. It's not their hardworking, skilled immigrants who happen to not have, legal status. So I think that's a really big part of it.
From, though, to what you're saying there, I don't understand, because he doesn't say that. None of his surrogates have said that. None of his Project 2025 doesn't say, oh, well, we're going to stop H-1B visas except for your workers. We're going to deport everybody else except for Iowan farm workers. Like, it doesn't say that. I don't understand where that's coming from, this idea of that. I guess from your perspective, then, what is the best case scenario that we can see here over the next, because we're already getting reports of 100 executive orders that are going to happen a week from today, some of which will happen around immigration, kind of a shock and awe campaign that they're using right now to say, we're going to just jumpstart this and get this started, which includes denaturalization. I cannot tell you how many folks I've talked to that are like, what's denaturalization? I'm like, that's where they take away your citizenship. It's like, well, no, they can't do that. I'm like, they did it in the first term. Well, what do you mean? And I'm like, look at this tweet from Stephen Miller, who says they're going to turbocharge it. You can't take away my citizenship. Yes, they can. So I guess, what is your hope for a best case scenario? Is it non-compliance based off of the state, or?
Best case scenario. I haven't thought about a best case scenario. So I think the best case scenario is they do a bad job again. I don't quite think they'll do as bad a job as last time in terms of having to do the Muslim ban several times before they got a constitutional version drafted. I do think that they're just more on top of what it is they want to achieve and how to do it legally through our existing legal systems. But hopefully we will be able to fight back in courts. I was so proud to be an attorney. There's this picture of Pakistani attorneys like protesting in the streets around something, and it's all these guys in like suits and ties who are just like, Wah! And so that's how I feel like we are. We're just like, Wah! Like, really, really fired up attorneys who are ready to like fight the good fight. I just watched all of Lord of the Rings in one weekend, so that's where my head's at.
Oh my God. The extended versions or the regular?
Oh yeah, 12 hours, one weekend. I do it once a year. I try to do it every January. But, to quote Aragorn, this day we fight. There might be a day when, like, men will fall, but, this day we fight. Like, all we can do is fight, against the odds. I'm really obsessed with the line that Frodo says when he says, I will take the ring to Mordor, although I do not know the way. And I feel like that's all of us right now. We're going to take the ring to Mordor. We don't know what's going to come. It's going to be awful. It's going to be like scary, and sad. And, but we got to do it because that's what you do. You fight. And so, best case scenario is we fight because that's what we were put on here on this earth to do. And hopefully they just suck at it like they did last time. I mean, it's interesting. Like, so Stephen Miller's got this anti-ACLU organization, and they've been sending out threatening letters and, stating the law as if it's not just their spin on the law. And there are a lot of, experts. There are a lot of agencies. We've got an amazing attorney general who are ready to, take this all to the courts and do what we can there. And I don't know what will happen, but that's the plan, and that's what we got to do. I've been reading a lot of books about World War II lately too. So like about the Nazi occupation of France, and thinking about like what moral obligations do we have? Like, how do we stand up in big and small ways? So
well, I mean, we have a friend who is very distraught about the election because her mom was a survivor. It got out from Austria from escaping the Nazis. And now she was born, her daughter, our friend, was born in the US and is now getting her Austrian citizenship because she's like, what do I have to do about fleeing neo-fascists in the United States? And I can't tell you how many queer folks, every election cycle, I have, folks that are like, if the Republican gets elected, I'm leaving the country, right? It's sort of a, grandstanding. This time, so many people, I've seen spreadsheets of this is what each country will need from me if I choose to try to get there. I've had 2 trans friends show me the point on the border of Minnesota and Canada. They're like, this is part of the border that we think we could get across if they try to close the border. And it's this weird, it's like, how do you when you're talking about that, like my family, my grandfather was born in Armenia and was conscripted into the Red Army, was captured by the Nazis, was sent to France to fight off the Americans, made it through. And so we grew up with these stories of the Vichy government. We grew up with what you're reading with right now, the stories of it. I didn't. And it's so hard to wrap our brains around, you know what I mean? That like, oh, we have to do this again. We have to think about these things again. And it's hard trying to think through what's actually going to get through to them. We had comprehensive immigration reform with some of the most conservative members of the US Senate. Right. And was it a perfect bill? I'm sure you can tell us if it was a perfect bill or if it was there. It was bipartisan. And now we've just mass deportations. That's our plan. No more H-1B visas, no other type of visas. That's just what we're going to do here without any sense of what it's supposed to be. And added to tariffs, how they all think that tariffs are going to be fine and paid for by China and Mexico and Canada. And they're like, oh, wait, no, we're going to have to pay for those. I just find myself, and I don't know, you're in a role where you actually have to legislate and work across the aisle with folks. And my brain is just hurting right now because I just see red whenever I have to engage with someone just in my personal life who is of that side of the aisle. And so I find it very, how are you navigating that right now?
Yeah. So there's something called.
That was some big emotions at you. Sorry.
I know, I'm feeling all of those emotions too now, but you ended in a place where I could talk in more concrete terms. So that's good. So there's something called the Dignity Index. And I believe the website is just index.us or something, but the Dignity Index. And it talks about how we approach one another. And it's a scale of 1 to 8. And at 1, We are like the people who disagree with us are like inhuman monsters, and it is our moral imperative to destroy them. And at 8, we are like, everyone is human and has human dignity and worth, and I will listen. And I always think about where am I on that spectrum, even with people who I disagree with. I think Stephen Miller is probably the exception to this rule. I think there is no universe in which I wouldn't be like at 1, like destroy. But when it comes to my colleagues in the House, I really try to like come to them from a place of openness, not to change my mind, but to be open to the fact that they are human beings representing constituents who are so different from me and from my community. And that, a lot of them are like parents. A lot of them have like hobbies, so here's a story that I don't think is in the news, so you can break it, but or it's not breaking news. But anyway, right before the end of the legislative session where everyone was yelling, like 5 minutes before that, we were doing bipartisan karaoke, like one floor down. I sang a very mean rendition of Oklahoma with Representative O'Driscoll. Very good acoustics in the Capitol. Yeah, you try to find ways to connect, and it's not to like give credence to their beliefs, which are just really anathema to a lot of what we believe, but to build human connection so that we can hear one another. And I will say, like, as a representative, I've had more relationships and communications with people who do not agree with me than in my entire life. And there are a handful of Republican constituents who I have a really good email dialogue going with. It's respectful, it's friendly, and we disagree like passionately. We like always disagree. But I feel like when you can create that dialogue, it's not just for their benefit, it's like for your own like emotional well-being, and also for like a better future.
This is why we need you in the in the legislature, and how thrilled I am that you are my representative. If folks do want to connect with you, how should they go about doing that?
Yeah, well, you can always email me. Like Jim said, I'm like compulsively responsive. I had one constituent who was like, dude, spend more time with your family. And I was like, it's cool, I'm efficient. I really do appreciate emails, even when they're templates. It helps me, like, I don't get that many emails. Like, I really like being a House member because I only have 40,000 constituents. That's enough people. I can connect with people like individually at that level. And so my email is rep.sandra.feist@house.mn.gov. If you just Google it, it's on the House website. Email is the best way to get in touch with me initially, but I'm happy to have coffee with constituents and happy to meet with you. I think it's a really key responsibility of all of us House members to be accessible and responsive, regardless of whether we agree with our constituents. I'm lucky to be in a seat where most of my constituents agree with me, but everybody deserves to be heard. So reach out.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here on The Gailey Show. We'll have you come back just to talk about Lord of the Rings.
Sweet. I'd love that. Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we're going to come back after this break. More to get to. Again, support our sponsors. Very important that you do that. We'll see you on the flip side of this break. Thank you again, Representative Feist.
Thanks.
Start the new year with nonstop laughs at Brave New Workshop's Big Christmas Energy. This holiday tradition, now running through January, is packed with sketches and songs to keep the laughs going. Enjoy new sketches and perennial favorites, including their unforgettable take on the 12 Days of Christmas. Whether you're recovering from awkward holiday conversations or just looking for a good time, Big Christmas Energy will leave you smiling. Catch Big Christmas Energy Thursdays through Saturdays in January at Brave New Workshop in Minneapolis. Get tickets at bravenewworkshop.org.
8 years ago, over 100,000 Minnesotans marched to the state capitol, standing together to defend women's rights, immigrants' rights, queer rights, and justice for all. Now, as our freedoms face new threats under an incoming administration built on oppression and divisiveness, it's time to stand together again. Join the People's March on January 18th at the Minnesota State Capitol. Together, we'll send a clear and unmistakable message: we will not go back. Building on the legacy of the Women's March Minnesota, this year's event will include a march to the Capitol and a rally. You'll connect with Minnesota organizations working to protect our rights. These organizations need your support, not just now, but over the next 4 years and beyond. The weather may be cold, but our commitment is unbreakable. The stakes are too high to stay silent. Let's show the strength of our voices as we fight for Minnesota's future. Again, that's the People's March on Saturday, January 18th at the state capitol. Details at womansmarchmn.com.
Greg Bakken here. I've told you about the out-of-the-world roast beef sandwiches at Maverick's Real Roast Beef, but I haven't told you about their Philly steak sandwiches, turkey bacon avocado sandwich, BLT, crispy chicken, fish sandwiches, brisket, or pulled pork. Okay, you get the idea. They make a lot of delicious food to the same standard as their famous roast beef sandwiches, and now I'm starving. I'm going to go to Maverick's Real Roast Beef off Lexington and Roseville, and you need to go too. Check out their menu at mavericksbeef.com.
The NLS Braille and Audio Reading Download Service gives patrons with visual impairments or physical limitations the freedom to read their way.
Bard is this beautiful web-based program for searching for books and for the ability to download them.
It's a great way to have a book with you without carrying a book.
For information about the National Library Service for the Blind and Physically Handicapped Library of Congress, visit loc.gov/thatallmayread.
Turn to Auto Technical with your vehicle donation. Even though Auto Technical is a small nonprofit, we have helped more families with transportation than any organization in Minnesota. Since '94, we have reconditioned donated vehicles so they have a higher tax benefit. Call Richard at 612-919-5526, 612-919-5526, or autotech.org.
You're listening to The Gailey Show. Ooh, this is such upbeat music. I love it. I'm your host, JP Derabagosian. With me in the studio, our executive producer, Jim Pounds. And I just got to say, there are people that you want to have in the legislature, and Representative Sandra Feist is one of them. Just to bring up that scale, the dignity scale at the end there, and how she's thinking about this and the conversations that she's having with all of her constituents it's really nice to know that we have her in the legislature.
I literally don't think there was a comment that she made that sounded, and I hear this from too many politicians, like, oh, those are the 6 talking points they're supposed to make sure they get into every interview. I felt like Sandra just spoke from her heart and from her brain and just answered the questions, and I didn't feel like there was any agenda, nothing she was trying to pull over on anybody. And so when people say all politicians are like, that's baloney, number one. And number two, she stands apart because she's a person honest about what she's doing and why, and trying to do the best for as many people as possible. And I don't know how you could want a politician to do anything else.
And that's why you have to have her in there, because I'm like scorched earth right now as my feelings that I'm still processing.
Yeah, I'm a 2 on her index.
But we do have, so it is an election tomorrow.
Yes.
There's a primary election in
District 60. This is a state senate district after, unfortunately, State Senator Diedzik had passed away. This is to replace her, and there's a primary tomorrow. It comes up right away. You got to get out and make sure you vote. There's 2 Republicans and I think 7 Democrats in the primary, and then 2 weeks after that, on the 28th, will be the election. And in order to keep our majority in the state senate, we've got to win that election on the 28th. But show up for both of them. It's the right thing to do as a human being in this country, so do your job.
Democracy on the line, making sure that our legislature is representative of the voters and not any weird backroom power grabs by the GOP. A week from today, The Gailey Show is going to be live at Queermunity in Uptown Minneapolis. If you know where Majors and Quinn is, that's where Queermunity is. January 20th is also the inauguration. And so we wanted to have an episode there because they are an amazing resource for us here in the Twin Cities. We've never had a space, an LGBTQ resource center like it in the Twin Cities. It is open 7 days a week, open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., where if you need to go and be seen and heard and valued and affirmed as a queer person, you can go there. And so we wanted to be there to talk about building community over the next 4 years. We're also going to have the director of organizing, Matt Llewellyn Otten, sorry, Matt, from Outfront, Minnesota, director of organizing. So he is going to be with us as well to sort of talk about, organizing and the legislative front and, the politics side of it. And then we'll have, queer community there. They'll be talking about the internal and what we can do to, sustain ourselves and nourish ourselves. And also will be the host of the Downright Upright Show, Philip Anthony. You can listen to the Downright Upright Show every Saturday evening at 5 p.m. Philip runs an amazing show and has had a lot of stellar guests to help us think and process and reflect and plan what we're going to be doing here as this administration gets ready. So you can join us, actually. You can join us in person at Queermunity on the 20th. They've got discounted parking at the parking garage. You can find street parking. There are buses that will literally drop you off at the corner. And of course, you can continue. We will be live on the air. So you can listen to us here on the radio. You can listen to us on any of the radio apps that you use on your phone or devices. And of course, we'll be on youtube.com/@the-Gailey Show. So we hope to see you there also, because afterwards there will be a mix and mingle. So you can meet myself and Philip and meet folks from Queermunity, mingle with Matt. There is a beverage. So right now there is a promotion. If you go to Queermunity, the cafe, which will be open, full service cafe, you get a free beverage with the purchase of an entree at the cafe. All you got to do is just mention us, AM 950, and you get that. So we hope that we see you there for this really important show, Mix and Mingle. We'll be watching the news as well, because we know that there will be 100 or up to 100 or around 100 executive orders that they will be firing off left and right. I think that's what worries me the most right now, is the scale and the scope of them. If they try to do a shock and awe like the president of South Korea tried to do, you wake up in the 2:00 in the morning and suddenly you don't have a democracy anymore. You have a dictatorship and they're trying to make a play. Not saying that's what's going to happen here, but I worry at the shock and awe campaign that they're going to do. So we will be monitoring those executive orders as they're coming through there and reporting them live as they happen on the air, if at all. So
it's reflective of the ego that we're dealing with. If a reasonable person would do 10, this one will do 100.
Well, but it's not just him. They've been plotting.
Oh, I know.
They've been plotting. And I think that we're going to see, and I think there are going to be a lot of MAGA voters or conservatives that held their noses and were saying stupid things like, oh, well, I just don't like the way that he tweets. So, but I like all of his policies. Well, we're about to find out what it's like to live under a president. His generals called him a fascist. His generals said that. His former staff said that. Republicans, not us, not the left side of the political wing in this country. So,
well, whenever I see an individual that has a title in that administration, I always put the word enabler in front of it. So they're the Secretary of Veterans Affairs and an enabler, because you've got to be pretty much committed to enabling an unhealthy personality to be in that position.
They're already going, if you haven't seen that news, they're already going through and interviewing staff members at various agencies. I can't remember, there's one agency in particular that AP News was reporting on that they are vetting and asking, who did you vote for in 2024? And are you sufficiently loyal to this president? It's
un-American.
Very un-American. That is our time for today. We will see you back here tomorrow at 2 o'clock. We're going to be talking about Meta, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Boo. We're also going to talk about book ban in Rochester Public Schools. I've got a lot to say about this. We'll talk about that tomorrow. In the meantime, the Matt McNeil Show is coming up next. And after that, Native Roots Radio. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Queermunity.